for this part here where I'm going to bring the foot ring in a little bit, and I'm going to get rid of this edge of clay here so it's one smooth line. Remember, I felt this pot before I put it down on the wheel head, and I have quite a bit of clay here. And so I'm over here on the right hand side, I'm holding my tool. I'm also pulling back with my other hand, and my arms are still in that throwing position. I'm locked into my body so that I'm not just kind of out here allowing this piece to grab. So I'm starting at the bottom, and I'm pushing in, and I'm slowly bringing my tool up, just like you do when you are making a pull on the rim of your plate. If I come too fast, I'm gonna get a spiral. And if I come too fast over and over and over again, I get bumpy, lumpy spirals over and over again. So you have to wait for this wheel head to turn the piece all the way around before you raise your tool up. I also don't want to trim all of it. I mean, I have a lot of clay to trim off, but I'm not going to push in and grab it all at once, because that's going to make a weak spot where I have heavier material above it, and so it could cause it to start to collapse and slump in. And so I'm just bringing my tool up, and I'm thinking about where I want this foot ring. I want that foot ring to be sort of right underneath that transition, right underneath the transition of where the floor becomes the wall. So just a little bit inside the floor. And so I'm gonna come in a little bit more on this plate, but I'm not gonna come very much further in, because I don't want my foot ring to be in the center here, right? And then it would be a spinning top. So I'm pretty happy with the width here, but I still have all this extra clay down here to remove, so I'm just gonna slowly come along and get this clay up, and then I'm releasing my pressure as I get to that edge so that I am not taking any more clay off there. So sometimes we can stop and move this clay out of the way if you need to see something a little bit more. Okay. I'm also using a round tool as opposed to the angle part, because if I use the angle part right now, I'm gonna dig into the back side of my rim. And I don't want to do that. I want to minimize what I'm taking away there, because that was pretty thin. But I do want this to transition from the rim to the foot ring here in a nice kind of smooth way. All right, so, and now I've gotten off all that extra kind of clay. I'm going to just check my centeredness. And it's a little off center, so I'm just going to shift this just a little bit, and I'll reposition those clay balls. All right, so now I have equal pressure all the way around. I can just come back in and kind of push those little balls. So there's always some adjustment that happens. So I've gotten this outside fairly resolved. Now I'm gonna come and I am gonna flip to that flat side, and I'm gonna start in the center, but to the right of the center, and just slowly, I'm evening out this bottom here. I'm not putting a lot of pressure down, but I'm leading with this corner of my tool that's closest to me, and I'm just evening this floor out. Okay, remember, I have less room here than I do on the outside there, and so I want to make sure that I'm mindful of how much pressure I put there. So just even that off, and now what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to create the outside of my plate sort of foot ring. You know, because again, we're thinking about these in a restaurant kind of context, so I don't want to have something that's sharp, but I do want a little bit of a delineation from the wall of the plate and the floor of the plate. And so I'm just going to come in with my smaller trimming tool in the corner here, and I'm going to hold it about 1/4 of an inch down and just push down a little bit and roll that over. Then I can flip the corner vertically here and come in and clean up this edge. And I'm just going to take my tool and round it over the top, because we want that nice rounded edge. I'm using very light pressure here. And I can just keep coming back and forth and cleaning this up. Remember, I had quite a bit of clay here. This has a smaller end too, so now I can come back in and do a little bit more detail work of continuing that line, getting some of that clay out of there. I'm also creating this line that's kind of crisp here, because that is going to be a really clean place for my wax line to go. So I'm building in elements now that will affect us later on when we think about decoration and glazing. So if you have a really clean line here, you can just wax your foot ring and you have that there, and you know you don't get any wax on this part of the plate, then you don't have to worry about freehanding it, right? This will also be a little catch place if the glaze is runny that you choose, and it will run in, it will fill that little groove before it spills over onto the shelves in your kiln. So I'm just going to clean up this area a little bit. The rim of Alex's plate is a little bit off center from the bottom of it, and that's fine. So I'm just allowing it to kind of bump around there. I don't want to take a lot of clay out there, but I do want a little bit of a smoother transition. And so as I become more refined and more refined, I'm putting less pressure, right? And what am I doing at the same time? I'm compressing a bit as well, right? So I'm taking that clay away, but I'm also using my tool to compress. So I'm pretty happy with what that looks like right there. I am going to take my fingers, or you can take a dry damp sponge, and just spend a little time compressing that outer edge here so that that clay that you've exposed gets some of that same attention that the rim does. That will help it prevent cracking later. It also gets rid of some of those tool marks, and it brings back in kind of an element of the thrown hand. All right, and now I can spend my attention here. And the reason I always do the side first is because if I trim this bottom out and it's fairly thin and I still need to put my hand here to have stability and press down and work on the outside, I will push right through the bottom. So you always want to trim the side of your plate or whatever vessel form you're trimming first, and then move to the center. And so I'm going to take a corner of my tool here, and about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, I am going to just dig in and make a little bit of a groove. So I'm holding that stationary. That is my visual cue. So I'm going to start in the center and move my tool out, but it's really nice to have that visual cue so you can prepare yourself to release your pressure so that you don't actually just come across and trim the foot ring right off, which will probably happen at least once to each of you. You also will trim through some things. Again, why these are practice, right? So it's just inevitable. Sometimes I trim through things as well. I have a rule that if I trim through or I have 3 collapses in a row, it means I'm not in the right physical and mental space to be at my wheel, and I need to walk away. I need to get a cup of tea. I need to go for a walk or a run, and then I come back, because so much of being here at the wheel does take a certain kind of focus. It can be really stress relieving in many ways, but it also requires you to be present. So I'm using the corner of this tool, and I just started in the middle. Again, I'm left-handed, so I'm going to hold this tool over here. I switch back and forth. So when I'm trimming on the outside, I'm holding the tool in my right hand. When I'm trimming on the inside, I'm holding my tool in my left hand. It's whatever feels right to you. I'm a bit ambidextrous as I go here. So I have my hand here, but I'm also, again, 2 hands on the tool. My arms are locked in at the side of my body, and I'm just grabbing a little bit of that clay, and I'm slowly coming out. And you can see that those trimming lines are right on top of each other, and that's what I want. I don't want to have a big spiral coming out. And there's quite a bit of pressure pulling my hand. That's why I need this other hand to keep this tool back. And so I'm almost to that edge, so I know that I'm going to kind of release my pressure a little there as I work into creating this corner on the inside of my foot ring. I can flip the tool again vertical, round that edge over a little bit. I might decide to make that thinner as well. But now I still have more clay here. Remember, I can go down less here in the center than here, but I want to make sure that I go down far enough so I can put glaze on the bottom of this. But I have an extra lump of clay here on the side, so I'm just going to take my tool and turn it on its flat side and slowly kind of take a layer of clay off. Again, it's still these little tiny corrections, right? It's responding to what you've just done and reacting to it. There's no prescribed, you do it this way, this way, this way, right? It's you have to respond to what you're seeing and doing. So I'm going to flip my tool over on its flat side here. I'm going to be mindful not to push super hard here because I don't want to push through. And I'm going to slowly bring that tool out, remembering that I can go deeper as I come into this corner. rim that I have here, right? Alex has this nice soft rim, so I want a nice soft rim. I also want this to be a nice soft rim so it doesn't chip. So I'm just gonna take that in a little bit, round this over. You know, if you end up with a lot of clay there and your foot ring's too high, also you can trim your foot ring shorter. I mean, so again, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have this like big tall feet. But you could if the pot called for it. All right, so I'm just re-articulating this outside shape here. I like that a little bit better. I'm gonna clean up my inside shape because again, that's gonna be the place where I use, the inside line is gonna be my guide for my brush when I'm waxing, because we're gonna be putting glaze on the floor of these plates. So I wanna have a nice groove on either side. I'm gonna switch back to my bigger tool right now and just use it to gently come across my floor and even it all out. Yeah.
Are we gonna wax the floor?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember on plates, we really want to have glaze on the bottom here, and on the inside it makes for a stronger surface. So on most forms that you make, when you put a foot ring on, all you need to do is wax the foot ring, because we've created this space here that can accommodate for glaze. Okay, so I'm just gonna clean up that little area there on the inside so I have that nice groove.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna take my my dry damp sponge and I'm gonna compress on the outside again, compress right here, compress my rim, right, my foot ring, because I've exposed all of that clay from trimming. I can spend a little time here as well.
Do you use a rib after you do that, or do you just use your finger?
I do a combination of both.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use a rib, you can use your finger, you can use whatever you want to. There are a couple little air bubbles that we popped open in trimming. I'm not going to worry about that too much because they're exposed now. But what I am going to have you guys do also in the center here is we're just going to trim a really small little double circle, because that's where we're going to write the Harvest Project 2018 in the bottom and our signatures. And so if everybody makes a little circular disc like this, we can come in and do that, okay? So I do have, let's see, where's a little. You could take a credit card rib or any kind of soft rib too. I mean, so what Diana was asking is, can you use your rib or your fingers? I will sometimes take a rib and do this compressing and just kind of hang out, and that really makes a nice tight surface. Right, so you can do any kind of combination of those things. And then when you're done, you're gonna remove these little balls of clay. Okay, and pick your plate up,